If you know anything about Dennis Rodman, you know that he has done many questionable acts that have caused him to be suspended a total of 13 times throughout his career. There was one time where the league lost his patience with him, and they suspended him indefinitely after he kicked a cameraman. So he was no stranger to losing his cool and making some head-scratching decisions. But there was one occasion where he felt that he crossed the line, and he decided to express his remorse through a letter. The letter was written to Scottie Pippen, who was a victim of a dirty play by Dennis Rodman. If you're an avid basketball fan, you might know what play I'm talking about. Let's go back to the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals series between the Chicago Bulls and the Detroit Pistons. This was Game 4, where the Bulls was holding a 3-0 series lead. The bad boy Pistons were facing the end of their dominating run, where they won 2 straight titles, and where they also beat the Bulls 3 straight times in the postseason. But this time around, the Bulls were kicking their butts at their home floor, so emotions were running high. Late in the game, in what seemed like an act of desperation, Dennis Rodman fouled Pippen hard at the basket. He then proceeded to push Pippen to the stands, which could have caused a serious injury. This was something that the NBA world did not take too kindly. So Rodman, along with the Pistons, received harsh criticism for acting like a bunch of sore losers. As you can see on your screen, this wasn't the only thing that they did that caused major headlines. Now, one thing that needs to be noted is that this was a calculated move by Dennis Rodman. I'm pretty sure that you all know the history of the Bulls and the Pistons very well. You know about the bad blood that existed between these two teams. You all know that Michael Jordan said before the game that the Pistons were bad for the NBA and that the league was going to be in a better place once their run was over. That didn't sit too well with them, so that surely has something to do with the way they acted. That's all been well documented. But there are a few things that have been overlooked over the years. There's one thing that we're going to discuss that has a lot to do with the legacy of Scottie Pippen. I'll also reveal what Rodman said and how Pippen responded. Let's first talk about Scottie Pippen. Here's the reason why I say that this was a calculated move by Rodman. The Detroit Pistons targeted Scottie Pippen to get him mentally out of the game. They thought he was weak. They thought the Bulls could never dethrone them if Pippen was their second best player. And none of this is speculation. This all came from the mouths of the Pistons players. Check out what Michael Wilbon wrote in the Washington Post in 1991. Quote, "The Pistons said privately all season that as long as Pippen was wearing a Chicago uniform, the Bulls will never beat them." End of quote. Then speaking of Pippen's Game 7 performance in the 1990 Conference Finals, when he was playing through a migraine and finished with only 2 points, one anonymous Pistons player said this to Wilbon, quote, "His head is not where he should have had that ice pack." End of quote. It's obvious that the Pistons did not respect Scottie Pippen. They just couldn't believe that the reason why Pippen couldn't come through in such a high-stakes game was because of a headache. But Pippen used all that scrutiny to raise his game to another level, and the Bulls went on a tear in the 1991 season. The Pistons were able to see for themselves just how better the Bulls got when they took a 3-0 series lead and were holding a huge lead. The Pistons sensed their season was slipping away, so they thought they would try one last trick to switch the momentum to their side and potentially start a run. So Dennis Rodman took it upon himself to get in Pippen's head by fouling him hard. But there's no question that he went too far and took the reckless decision of pushing him towards the stands. Thankfully, Pippen did not get injured by that play and did not seem fazed at all by their dirty tactics. The Bulls completed the series sweep, and Pippen was able to quickly remove the stigma that he was mentally weak. 31 years later, and now we think of Pippen as the ultimate champion. I honestly believe that Pippen learned to play better in the clutch after that experience. For example, in the 1992 playoffs, Pippen produced a triple-double in Game 7 against the New York Knicks in the semifinals. He also led the Bulls to come back from a double-digit deficit in the fourth quarter of the title-clinching game against Portland in the 1992 finals. Keep in mind that Michael Jordan was on the bench during a large portion of that run the Bulls made. He proved to be the type of player that MJ could count on in big moments, and you have to give Pippen a lot of credit for responding that way after the media was killing him after the Bulls got eliminated in 1990. But now let's talk about Dennis Rodman. I think we're all in agreement that he is one of, and if not, the most peculiar player the league has ever seen. He's flamboyant, he's misunderstood, and I think that's one of the reasons why the general public is fascinated by him. There was even a 30 for 30 documentary on Dennis Rodman, and there's a lot of information about his past that might have helped us connect the dots a bit about why he acted the way he did at times on the court. I'm not here to judge his character or the decisions he has made, but I think a lot of people were caught by surprise when Dennis Rodman wrote a letter directed to Scottie Pippen and the Chicago Bulls. What did Rodman say to him? This is what was released publicly. He said, quote, "You are a great player, and I'm glad you weren't hurt by the incident. It was merely one of frustration." End of quote. When you read the articles that were written at the time that quoted that letter, none of the writers were buying it. No one thought it was sincere. That was just the reputation that Rodman and the Detroit Pistons had during this time, and I guess you can say it was warranted. That was probably the main reason why Pippen was skeptical of Rodman's apology. He suggested that someone else wrote it for him. He also said this according to the New York Times, quote, "After listening to what was been saying about the team and the organization for so long, and after what he did to me, it's hard for me to believe that he had changed completely all at once." End of quote. Pippen was the target of a lot of verbal and physical mistreatment by Rodman and the Pistons, so I don't blame him for responding that way. So was Rodman sincere? No, he wasn't. Everyone was right about the whole situation. This is what Jackie McMullen reported for ESPN in 2020. She said that the Pistons public relations director, Matt Dobik, drafted an open letter from Rodman to Pippen and the Bulls apologizing for his actions. Matt urged Rodman to sign it so he could release it to both the Chicago and Detroit media. So essentially, all Rodman did was sign the letter. However, we should include what Rodman did once he joined the Bulls in 1996. This is what Rodman said in a podcast hosted by my boy, Tiki Barber, in 2020. After he mentioned the time he had a meeting in Jerry Krause's house, he said this, quote, "Phil came up to me and said, 'Dennis, before we put you on the team, could you do me a favor?' I'm like, 'What is that, Phil?' He said, 'Could you go and tell Scottie you're sorry?' I'm like, 'Sorry for what?' He said, 'That series you guys had in 91. I said, 'You want me to go say sorry for that?' And he said, 'Would you just go and do it?' I said, 'All right.' I went over to Scottie and I said, 'Scottie, sorry about that, man, pushing you out of bounds.' And Scottie said, 'Don't worry about it, it's okay. We just want to win a championship.'" End of quote. Clearly, it didn't come from Rodman to apologize both times, but he could have also refused to do it. I think that's fair to say. However, what we do know is that Rodman was willing to let go of their bitter rivalry and play alongside two players who he had very intense battles with. I don't have to tell you that it all worked out in the end, but you can say that the story of the Jordan, Pippen, Rodman era started with that letter. If it wasn't for Pippen getting stronger in every aspect of his game, maybe the Bulls wouldn't have established the greatest NBA dynasty of the modern era. And I think Rodman started forming a deep respect for him that eventually led him to team up with them. That didn't start when he signed the contract with the Bulls, but when he signed that letter. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching the video. Till next time.